routinely across the organisation. We are a group of fantastic people. You would not get a better group of people, more passionate, more highly skilled about the environment than you would find in the EPA. They are an enormous asset to the community, and it's a pleasure to be with them. But ultimately, that doesn't count for anything, I'm afraid. What counts is the result. What counts is the environment. If it's getting better, we're winning, and that's good. If it's not, then we take stock and we try something else, because we have to accept that it all comes down to the result. As Suzuki would say, it's about those minor victories out there. Are we winning? If we are, that's good, but let's not take that for granted. If we're losing, how do we make the most of that situation to turn that into success? And that's why we're willing to be judged on our environmental performance. It is the single most important thing that regulators can do. And I know, and Murray reflected on that initial speech that I gave at a forum very early, and that the sort of collective, gasping of air that the regulator might be doing its job and out there and holding people to account. Well, we will do our job whilst the environment needs protecting. And we will do our work so long as the performance of the environment is not acceptable. And it's not acceptable. There is some fantastic work being done. There are some great results being achieved. But I see far too much out there that is just not on. I'm not picking on anybody, and we're not going after anybody, but we will do our job until that performance is improved. And if we get it wrong, then you can challenge us. And we will get it wrong, because we are determined to use our judgment and make decisions. We're not sitting around waiting for all the information to be in, because we can't do that. We've got important work to do. But we will make it much easier for people to say, look, I understand where you're going, I understand what you're trying to do, but you've got the wrong issue, or you've got the wrong solution to it, or I think you've been a bit heavy-handed. I think they are really important criticisms that we want to hear and listen to and respond. But we'll do that in a much more transparent way than we ever have before. So one part of that transformation into a modern regulator is to be much clearer, as I said, about what our work is. We are the Environment Protection Authority. Our job is to establish the environmental standards. If we don't, no one else will. Our job is to make sure that organisations that are subject to them are assessed and we regulate compliance against those standards. And our job is to work with businesses to meet and go beyond them. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment when I discuss the compliance review. We're not about just setting a line and wishing you luck to achieve it. We're accountable for the outcome. We will work ourselves into a state where we will not leave you not knowing what to do. We need businesses to be fantastic. We need sensational organisations. The whole standard setting process is not aspirational, it's actual. We can't ask anybody to achieve something that someone else is not already doing. And we will do everything we can to make sure that those champion organisations are out there and to push everybody else to meet those standards. As we say in the organisation, if in doubt, protect the environment. I understand that there are important parts of both government and business who've got issues to push and responsibilities to meet, and we respect all of those. Our responsibility is to the environment. We are the Environment Protection Authority. We are here to protect and care for and improve that environment. We have a job to do, and we intend to do it. And that job's not getting any easier. And so if we get a bit shaky sometimes, we can look at what happens around the world when regulators do take their eye off the ball and don't do their job. The BP Deepwater Horizon off the coast of Florida, Louisiana has sort of dropped off the news now. But it is a sobering reminder of what's at stake when regulators don't do their work. I think those of you who heard President Obama's, I think the first address that he gave post the explosion and I suppose the realisation of what was at stake was only about 3 sentences into it before he started to pay out on the regulatory body that was responsible for overseeing these drilling operations. They weren't doing their job. They were literally out to lunch with the people that they were responsible for regulating. And that happens every time. There is a serious look at why things have gone wrong. People look to their environmental regulators or regulators in all jurisdictions to say, well, where were you? This was not supposed to happen. There are laws to stop this. What was going on? And people in our situation would do well and have to do well to keep being reminded of these things. So we've got some work to do. We also, of course, will continue to work really closely with a whole range of organisations which are important partners to it, whether it's our industry associations like AI Group and VECI and the particular programs that we've been running. One of the great strengths of I think the environmental regulators is their partnerships with those people who produce that result, and that's a really important part of our work as well, our work with PACEA and other bodies, and we'll keep doing that, and we're going to keep being really innovative with programs like the ERES program, the Environmental Resource Efficiency Program, things which are going to be an enormous part of our future. Murray asked if I would talk a little bit about the new powers that are coming our way in relation to the regulation of greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm mindful of the time and I'll move quite quickly through it. So suffice to say, clearly, we've got, 93% of our energy is generated by the burning of brown coal in the valley. The government's made very clear that we're on a transition now to a much lower carbon, low emission future. And in its white paper and the subsequent climate change bill, it has foreshadowed a role for regulation in doing that. Clearly, that has caused, understandably, some concern amongst some businesses who desperately want to know how that authority will be discharged. And we are very committed to forming the regulations that will support that power next year. We'll be extremely consultative with those organisations who will be subject to that regulation. I do urge business to keep calm in that regard. We have a lot of work to do to fashion that reform. It is clearly a very serious business, and we are working flat out to get our act together so that we will be capable of giving effect to whatever regulatory instrument is developed through that consultative process. But the Premier will be making some announcements, I think as we speak actually, about some of the formal consultative processes that will support that work. I might just an enforcement review, Murray, before I shut up and take some questions and comments. I've said a moment ago that we've got a job to do and we intend to do it. Having said that, we know that our compliance and enforcement work, whilst being strongly criticised by both the Ombudsman and the Auditor General, is not something that we can just pull some lever, flick some switch and go out there and bolster up. This is a complicated and serious business, and in formation of our models around compliance and enforcement, we've determined to engage very strongly with the community and business. I think this week in Altona was the 14th or 15th public forum that we've held over the last 4 weeks. We've been everywhere from Warrnambool to Bairnsdale up to Mildura. We've had more than 300 people participate in those forums. More than 200 businesses have contributed to separate sessions for them. Indeed, more than 100 EPA people have been involved in those sessions. It's been absolutely fantastic. And we're out there asking both business and the community to give us their views about how we should balance our support and enforcement and influencing activity. We know we've got a job to do. We know we've got an enforcing role to do. But we also want to be very clear on people's expectations of us in terms of how we help businesses to comply, and we know we've got an important job to do there. And we also, how much of our work we're able to put into influencing those champions and potential champion businesses to go beyond that and do some fantastic work. We've been out there canvassing some models, that, including the current approach, which seeks to place a lot of emphasis on the attitude or the approach of the businesses that we're regulating. So we're differentiating between those who are trying and those who aren't, and reserving our sort of harshest enforcement effort for those who are sort of most obviously not trying to do the right thing and being as supportive as we can. But we've also been out there looking at and canvassing other models which don't just look at the attitude and the approach of organisations, but also what are the consequences of failure.